The courtroom was packed. Cameras from every corner of the globe streamed the event live. Millions of eyes were glued to screens, watching the man standing in the defendant's seat. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, stared down at the cold, polished floor. The judge's gavel struck the sound block. The voice that followed was stern, sharp, accusing Traoré of recklessness, defiance of international law, and disrupting fragile global peace. The room fell deadly silent. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. The towering judge, known for his unwavering adherence to protocol, had never faced a defendant like this, a man who dared to challenge centuries of foreign power and intervention. Traoré's calm eyes met the judge's with quiet fire. Outside the court, in the streets of Ouagadougou and Washington, Paris and New York, people held their breath. This was not just a trial. It was a battle for truth, dignity, and the soul of a continent. The stakes could not be higher. As the judge prepared to deliver his next verdict, the history behind this moment pressed heavily in the air. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't just a man on trial. He was the symbol of a long-fought struggle. For decades, Burkina Faso and many African nations had suffered under the shadow of economic exploitation and foreign meddling. Rich resources, stolen wealth, broken promises. The pain was real. The lives lost, countless. Traoré's rise was no accident. The people of Burkina Faso had trusted him to stand tall, to fight back against those who treated their land like a game of chess. But here in this foreign court, the language was different. The charges focused on illegal seizure of power and threats to international order. To Traoré, it felt like another trial, not just of himself, but of Africa's dignity. Would the world finally hear their truth? The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Captain Traoré," he said, voice cold, "your actions have caused instability. You disregarded international agreements. You threatened the peace we all rely on." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Some nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. Traoré stood tall. No anger showed on his face, only steady determination. "Your Honor," he began, voice calm but resolute, "I do not deny my choices. But I ask you, what justice exists when my people's voices are silenced, when their futures are stolen before they even begin?" The judge's expression hardened. "This is not about voices or futures. It is about law." The tension thickened. Cameras zoomed in. Viewers across continents felt their hearts quicken. What would Traoré say next? Would he break under pressure or shatter expectations? For a moment, the courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. Traoré took a slow breath and looked directly at the judge. "Justice," he said quietly, "cannot live behind walls built by those who have never felt the pain of those they judge." The judge's gaze sharpened. "Explain yourself." Traoré's voice grew stronger. "For too long, my people have been pawns in a game they didn't choose. Their lands rich, their voices ignored, their futures sold for profit." In the gallery, some listeners shifted uncomfortably. Others stared with wide eyes. "Is it just," Traoré continued, "to call me a criminal when I fight to protect my people's right to decide their own destiny?" Outside, a young woman in Ouagadougou watched the stream with tears in her eyes. This was not just a trial, it was a battle for hope. Traoré's words seemed to fill the room like a storm. He spoke of children in villages where schools lacked books, of farmers whose harvests were taken by foreign companies, of mothers who buried sons lost in conflicts fueled by distant powers. "These are not stories from the past," Traoré said, voice cracking with emotion. "They are today's reality." He paused, eyes glistening. "And yet, when I stand here accused, the world ignores their faces." The judge's expression flickered for a moment. a sign that even the sternest were not untouched. The courtroom cameras caught every detail. Millions watching felt the weight of history collide with the raw human cost. Suddenly, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. A young lawyer representing Traoré rose. "Your Honor, this is not just a case about laws and borders. It is about respect. Respect for a people's right to live free from exploitation." The judge's voice was firm, but less harsh. "Captain Traoré, if what you say is true, why must it come at the cost of stability?" Traoré's gaze never wavered. "Because stability without justice is a cage. My people deserve freedom, not chains disguised as peace." The judge leaned back, a rare pause in his judgment. The world held its breath. Outside, a crowd in Burkina Faso quietly cheered, hope flickering brighter than before. The judge looked at Traoré, eyes searching behind the calm exterior. "Captain," he said slowly, "many see you as a hero. But what about the risk? The lives lost in conflict? The chaos?" Traoré's voice softened but stayed firm. "Your Honor, ask any mother in Burkina Faso. Is it chaos to fight for dignity? Is it risk to reclaim your own land from those who would steal it?" A hush fell. The judge's usual certainty cracked. For the first time, the weight of reality seeped through his courtroom walls. Traoré spoke then not as a soldier or politician, but as a man carrying the hopes of millions. "My people have waited for justice for too long. We have watched foreign powers profit while our children go hungry. This is not rebellion. This is survival." Tears welled in his eyes as he described the faces of those who depended on him. The elderly, the young, the families who saw in him a chance for a new dawn. "In their eyes, I see the future of Africa. I cannot turn away." The courtroom murmured. Reporters whispered. Viewers debated online. On one side were those clinging to old power structures, fearing change. On the other, millions who saw Traoré as a beacon, a leader who refused to bow. The judge's gavel hovered but did not strike. The world was caught in the balance between law and justice, between silence and truth. And Traoré? He stood ready to face whatever came next, his heart unbroken, his voice unyielding. Traoré's eyes scanned the courtroom once more. His voice lowered, carrying the heaviness of a burden only he could understand. "Your Honor, every decision I make carries the hopes of 20 million souls. Fathers who dream of safe homes, mothers who pray for their children's future, youth who demand a life free from chains." He paused, swallowing hard. "If I falter, they suffer." The room was silent, the judge's stern mask faltering for a heartbeat. Just then, an unexpected voice rose. A former diplomat, who had once served in Africa, stood before the court. "Captain Traoré speaks truth," she said, her voice trembling. "I've seen the pain caused by endless foreign interference. Promises broken, resources stolen." She looked directly at the judge. "If justice ignores this, then it serves no one." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Traoré's allies exchanged glances, hope sparking. The judge closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with new clarity. "Captain Traoré, your words carry weight, but the law is strict. Your actions have consequences." Traoré nodded. "I accept that, but no law should silence the cries for justice." The courtroom seemed to breathe in unison. The old rigid order faced an unprecedented challenge, a man whose courage could not be denied. The courtroom's energy shifted, like a deep breath held just before the plunge. Traoré remained calm but resolute, knowing the moment had come to speak not just for himself, but for millions unheard. He looked at the judge, then at the sea of cameras and faces beyond. "Your Honor, the truth I carry is heavy, but it's time to lift the veil." Traoré's voice cracked slightly as he recounted decades of exploitation, unseen chains binding African nations. "We are rich in resources," he said, "but poor in justice. Our lands stripped, our people silenced. It is not rebellion to fight for freedom. It is survival." He paused, wiping a tear from his cheek. Every life lost is a story ignored by those who write history. The courtroom was hushed, many faces touched with shock and sadness. Traoré's eyes shimmered as he shared a personal story. "A boy in my village lost his father to a conflict fueled by outside greed. That boy, my brother, asked me, 'Why do they hate us so much?' He swallowed hard. I had no answer. But I promised him one thing, that I would fight until no child in Africa felt forgotten or betrayed." A few viewers quietly sobbed. The weight of his words landed like a stone in everyone's heart. Traoré's voice rose, clear and unwavering. "This trial is not just about me. It is about the dignity of an entire continent, about a people who refuse to be shadows in their own land." The judge, once stern and unyielding, sat motionless. Even his critics felt the weight of these words. Then, unexpectedly, silence was broken, not by a judge's ruling, but by spontaneous applause. The courtroom erupted. Tears streamed down faces, and for a moment, walls that had stood for centuries began to crumble. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered, not in protest, but in celebration. Traoré's words ignited a global conversation about justice, sovereignty, and truth. Leaders, activists, and ordinary people joined together, inspired by a man who dared to stand alone and speak boldly. The world began to listen differently. In his closing statement, Traoré looked beyond the courtroom, to the future. "My fight is for every child who deserves a tomorrow free from fear, for every mother who dreams of peace, for a world where truth cannot be silenced." His voice softened but carried infinite hope. And as the courtroom lights dimmed, one thing was clear. The story of Ibrahim Traoré was just beginning. If this story touched your heart and opened your eyes, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Share your thoughts, your tears, your hopes. Let's keep this conversation alive. Together, we honor those who fight for truth and justice. Your support helps voices like Traoré's be heard worldwide. Don't just watch, be part of the change.